The vanishing. The snow came down like a curtain being drawn across the world. Colonel William Hayes stood at the edge of Fort Apache, watching the white flakes swirl through the December air. Behind him, the wooden buildings of the fort creaked in the wind. Before him, the high desert of Arizona Territory stretched endlessly, now disappearing beneath layers of white. It was 1872, and Hayes had been stationed here for 3 years. He thought he knew this land. He thought he understood its secrets. But the blizzard forming on the horizon made him uncertain. In all his time here, he had never seen snow like this. Not in the desert. Not in December. "Sir, the scouts are reporting in," said Lieutenant Morrison, appearing at his side. The young officer's breath formed clouds in the cold air. "They say the Apache camp is just beyond the ridge. Maybe 200 people. Women, children, elders. Some warriors, but not many." Hayes nodded slowly. He had been tracking this band for weeks. They had left the reservation, seeking their traditional winter grounds in the mountains. The Army's orders were clear: bring them back, by force if necessary. But something about this moment felt wrong. "How long until the storm hits?" Hayes asked. Morrison glanced at the sky. "An hour. Maybe less." Hayes was quiet for a long moment. He thought of the canvas tents being loaded onto wagons behind him. He thought of the supplies, the blankets, the rations his men carried. Then he thought of the Apache families camped beyond that ridge, exposed to what was coming. "Prepare the men to move out," he said finally. "Will we go at first light, before the storm?" But fate had other plans. The blizzard arrived with surprising speed, as if the sky itself had made a decision. Within minutes, the world became white. Visibility dropped to nothing. The wind howled like a living thing, pushing against the fort walls with angry hands. Hayes ordered his men to stay put. No one could move in this. They would have to wait it out. The storm lasted 3 days, 3 days of constant snow, 3 days of wind that never stopped screaming. The soldiers huddled in their barracks, burning wood in the stoves, wrapped in every blanket they owned. Even inside the fort, the cold found ways to creep in through cracks and gaps. Hayes spent those 3 days thinking. He thought about his orders. He thought about duty. He thought about the Apache families caught in this storm with nothing but hide shelters and whatever supplies they carried. He wondered if anyone could survive this. On the 4th day, the storm broke. The silence was startling. Hayes stepped outside into a world transformed. Snow covered everything in smooth, undisturbed white. The sun emerged, weak but bright, reflecting off the crystalline surface until it hurt to look at. "Mount up," Hayes ordered. "We ride to the Apache camp." The journey took longer than usual. The horses struggled through drifts that reached their bellies. The men moved slowly, carefully, through a landscape that seemed alien and strange. When they reached the ridge and looked down into the valley where the Apache camp had been, Hayes felt his heart sink. There was nothing there. No tents. No fires, no tracks. No sign that anyone had ever been there at all. The snow lay smooth and perfect, like freshly poured cream. "Impossible," Morrison whispered beside him. "They were here. We saw the smoke from their fires." Hayes dismounted and walked to where the camp had been. His boots crunched in the snow. He looked around, searching for any sign, any clue. But there was nothing. 200 people had simply vanished. "Spread out," he ordered his men. "Search the area. Look for tracks, disturbed snow, anything." The soldiers fanned out across the valley. They searched for hours. They found nothing. No footprints leading away. No bodies frozen in the snow. No abandoned supplies. It was as if the Apache had been lifted from the earth by invisible hands. As the sun began to set, painting the snow pink and gold, Hayes stood alone in the center of where the camp had been. He turned slowly, looking in all directions. The mountains rose around him, ancient and knowing. The desert stretched behind him, patient and eternal. And then he understood. The Apache knew this land in ways he never would. They had lived here for generations, learning its moods, its secrets, its hidden pathways. While Hayes and his men saw only a blank landscape of snow, the Apache saw something else entirely. They saw routes through canyons that sheltered them from the wind. They saw caves that offered warmth. They saw ways to move without leaving tracks by following rocky outcrops and wind-swept ridges. They had not vanished. They had simply gone home. Hayes smiled, surprising himself. He thought of his orders, waiting in his pocket. He thought of the report he would have to write, and he thought of those families, hopefully safe somewhere in these mountains, gathered around fires, telling stories, surviving. "Sir?" Morrison approached, his face concerned. "What do we do?" Hayes looked at his lieutenant. The young man was cold, tired, and confused. They all were. They had come so far, through such a storm, only to find nothing. "We go back to the fort," Hayes said quietly. "We report what we found, which is nothing. But, sir, the Apache are gone," Hayes said firmly. "Vanished during the blizzard. We searched thoroughly and found no trace. That's what the report will say. That's what happened." Morrison studied his commanding officer's face for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. "Yes, sir." As they rode back to Fort Apache, Hayes looked up at the mountains one last time. Somewhere up there, he thought, children were laughing. Elders were telling stories. People were living, surviving, being free. The Army would say the Apache vanished during the blizzard of 1872. Reports would be filed. Officers in distant cities would read them and shake their heads at the mystery. But Hayes knew the truth. The Apache had not vanished. They had done what they always did. They had adapted. They had survived. They had used the storm as cover, the snow as protection, the land as their ally. They had simply gone where the Army could not follow, and Hayes, walking back to his fort through the deep snow, decided that some mysteries were better left unsolved. Some disappearances were meant to be. Some people deserved to vanish, to slip away into the white silence, to find their way home. The snow continued to fall gently as night approached, covering their tracks, hiding their paths, keeping its secrets safe. In the mountains, smoke rose from hidden valleys. Fires burned, families gathered close, and the land, ancient and wise, kept its people safe. The Army would never understand how they vanished, and that, Hayes thought, was exactly how it should be.